Want to call to order the Amberley Village Council meeting of August 14, 2023. Please call the roll.
Ben Hunt.
Here.
Tom Muthing.
Here.
Keely Paul. Here. Bob Rosen.
Here.
Jay Schatz.
Here.
Dara Wood.
Here.
And if everyone could please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everyone. First item on the agenda this evening is the minutes from our last regularly scheduled meeting. Those were circulating in advance. Are there any questions or comments on those minutes? Seeing none, we'll consider the minutes approved. We'll now go on to the finance report for June of 2023.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to talk about the finance report for June 2023. Earnings tax, the total number of dollars collected in the month of June was $347,000. Our year-to-date now is at $2.5 million. Our estimate for the year of 2023 is $3.7 million. So thus far, we have collected 67% of the earnings tax. Overall, the revenue for the month of June was $395,000. We're currently sitting about 3.7 year-to-date on the general fund revenues, so we're about 60% collected from that perspective. In regards to the expenses for the month of June, expenses were about $473,000. We've spent a little over $3 million this year, and our estimate for the budget is $6.9 million, so we're currently sitting at about 43% expend rate. We closed out the month of June with a 6.1 unencumbered general fund balance. And that concludes my report.
Are there any questions for the manager? If not, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is this evening we're recognizing our village treasurer, Rick Kay, for 15 years of service. And I'll just make a few comments, Rick, and then we'll go down in front. 15 years ago, Amberley Village received a fortunate recommendation from its departing treasurer, Rich Batterberry, regarding the selection of a new treasurer. The village made an astute decision by embracing this recommendation and officially designating Rick Kay as the treasurer. Rick was the perfect combination of being a CPA with Barnes and Denick and a village resident. His prior employment at Gibson Greeting Cards from 91 to 97, combined with his 21-year residency in Amberley, underscored his strong connection to the community. Presently, Rick holds the position of tax manager at Mellett & Mellett and boasts an impressive CPA career spanning nearly 4 decades. Rick's unparalleled commitment to this responsibilities is truly remarkable. Virtually as a volunteer, he dedicates his weekends diligently reviewing all banking activities, signing checks, and ensuring the village's integrity and transparency. His meticulous attention to detail and unwavering dedication have proven invaluable over the past 15 years. And now those were prepared comments by our village manager. I just want to add a couple things. As a CPA myself, I mean, you can't underestimate the importance of Rick, especially in a small organization like Amberley Village. It is critical for organizations to have segregation of duties, and Rick forms probably the most important segregation of duty in reviewing those checks and all of the banking activities. You can't, I mean, every couple months you see something in the press of situations where small communities have had malfeasance and things like that. And it's because of people like Rick, and especially Rick over these past 15 years, that this has not occurred in the village. I mean, it is just so critical what he does. And you know, there have been council meetings where I have walked by Rick's position and he has a stack about, and this is no lie, it'll be a stack of this high, there you go, of things that is waiting for him to review. And so He sits here during council and listens to everything, and then after the council meeting's over, his responsibilities aren't finished. He sits there and reviews these checks and so forth and signs everything. So I can't thank Rick enough for his dedication over these past 15 years. And as I said, this is so critically important, and I really thank you. So with that said, I'd like to present you out front, so you do have to come out front. I think we're going to get to stand on either side of the yellow.
I've seen this done 1,000 times, but I've never been here before.
Rick, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We'll now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the committee reports. And the Finance Committee is first, and as chair of the Finance Committee, the Finance Committee met, and in most months, we only have the review of the financials, which our village manager so eloquently takes care of, and I don't have to say anything in the committee reports. But this time, we did have one other item, and that was an item that the committee reviewed a proposed policy on fundraising for special events. And this was something that was requested for the village manager to put together. It largely just documents our practices that the village has undertaken when we've had fundraising for special events, like the ice cream social. But the council, during the village manager's review back in, I think, February or March, one of the objectives that we gave to the village manager for 2023 was to develop that policy, which he did. And so this is not something that requires council approval, but the Finance Committee met, reviewed it, and endorses it. The village manager will send a copy to all members of council. If any of the members of council have any concerns, then please bring it up with either myself or at the next meeting. But I do think it's an important thing that we now are documenting something that, you know, is kind of in the past has gone behind the scenes, and now there's a clear policy that we can point to of what we're doing. Are there any questions with respect to that? If not, that concludes the Finance Committee report. We'll now move on to the Streets, Public Utilities, and Sewers Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce Resolution 2023-19. This resolution will authorize the village manager to enter into a contract to purchase rock salt. It's one of the most exciting things that we do in the Streets Committee every year, and is subject to surprisingly some controversy every year as to how much of this salt we are going to purchase. This year, we are going to purchase 400 tons of rock salt. In the past, this is probably the midpoint. There are times when we have purchased as much as 1,000 tons. And there's probably as little as 100 tons. It just depends on how much we use from prior years. As with many programs of the village, in order to take advantage of some bulk purchasing pricing, the village uses the Hamilton County. We contract with them and go into a bulk purchasing agreement with them. They received 3 bids this year, and Not surprisingly, we are going to accept the lowest bid. Rock salt is rock salt, in case, there's not much distinction between those. And the contract this year was won by Morton Salt. The purchase price is going to be $82.10 per ton. The highest bid was $91.31 per ton. There was a bid of $84.17 per ton in the middle. We have a good supply of salt that was left from this year, so it's not anticipated that even though we are entering into this purchasing agreement, that we will not have to actually spend money for this additional salt until 2024, and the expenditure for this will be put in the 2024 budget. Jay, if you,
Kudos to the mayor. I think this is a parting victory for him on restraint of salt purchasing.
So the committee recommends the adoption of Resolution 2023-19.
Do I
And
hear-
I move for approval of the resolution.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we adopt Resolution 2023-19, authorizing the village manager to enter into the contract for the purchase of rock salt. Are there any questions or comments? If not, it has been moved and seconded that we adopt Resolution 2023-19. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Be it noted that that resolution passes unanimously.
And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. We'll now move on to the Health, Education, and Welfare Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Health, Education, and Welfare Committee met in July to discuss the proposed changes to the non-discrimination ordinance by the Human Rights Commission. They brought the potential changes to us. This meeting really was to hear from the law solicitor. We asked him to delve into it a little bit and see if he saw any flags, anything that we needed to really think about before we even got into the discussion with lots of questions from the committee. And some of the questions and the things that came up were, what will this cost the village as far as just to process this and legal fees to make the changes. But also it was brought up because there are consequences to the violations, that those could potentially be costly because then cases would need to be tried in court. So then that would add another aspect of the financial strain that it could have. Also, some other concerns that were raised were about confidentiality, because if this was a case, everything we do is public record, so things would be discussed and there wouldn't really be a lot of confidentiality for people that came forward to say, we want to report this, but we don't want it out there. Also, we wanted to understand a little more about what the religious exemptions would mean, because that is in there throughout. And the law solicitor, as well as the committee, felt that it would be good to look at some more ordinances to make some comparisons, not just what came to us through looking at Gulf Manor's ordinance. There also may be some language that's a little duplicative to what's in Ohio and federal equal rights ordinances. And in the end, basically, the committee, we would like to see, it seemed from the committee, we'd like to see some stronger language, but we also don't want to put the village at risk, so we need a little more information as we're looking at this. So the village manager and the solicitor are going to go back and meet before our next meeting, which will be September 13th at 4 p.m., to kind of look a little more depth and to give a little more feedback to the committee, and maybe see if they can check out some other ordinances to compare and make sure that we are covered and we're making a strong statement that we are not going to tolerate that kind of behavior in our community, but making sure that we also are not putting the village at risk. Any questions?
Thank you.
That concludes my report, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now move on to the manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of items to mention from the manager's report. Electric aggregation has generated quite a few phone calls for staff this past month, primarily because there's been a different process in terms of the notification for existing aggregation customers. In the past, it was a pretty simple process. The change was made, but in this situation, all the current customers received emails from Duke saying that there's communicating what was happening. Energy Harbor, which is the contract, our new aggregation contractor, was not part of that equation. It is part of the process, but that was not well spelled out. And this is all part of a process for notifying users in terms of the electric aggregation process. So we fielded quite a few calls. I know quite a few of you have received that correspondence as well. We are advising residents that they do not need to do anything. That's the bottom line here. Just continue on. You don't need to do anything. We expect that as these letters have been released to our residents, they're coming sort of in batches. So I think we're sort of at the tail end of it because we did get notification from some residents that they did receive the email from Energy Harbor. So that's a good sign that we're now over that threshold from the Duke letters. The second item I wanted to mention is that the village was successful in getting a grant for striping the remaining 2 pickleball courts out here, and also for changing out some fencing at the upper ball field. So you're aware that the pickleball courts have now, all 4 of them have now been striped. So that's been completed. But this past month, the completion of the fencing at the ball field has taken place. So you may recall that there were some safety concerns about the fencing along first and third base. Along first base, that has been replaced with a 10-foot fence that looks very nice. And then on the third base side, it's a 6-foot fence to protect not only players, but also any observers, visitors to the park, and certainly to anybody who is walking the track out here at the park. And then lastly would be the cars that are in the parking lot, which have sustained a few dings over the years. But that work is pretty much finished. There's still a few punch list items that need to be taken care of, but for the most part, that project has been completed, and we're appreciative to Hamilton County Public Health for the grant dollars that helped pay for that improvement. And the last item I wanted to mention is in regards to the Reading Road corridor. The Drake Motel and the Carousel Inn are both being demolished. You are familiar that those were acquired by the port this past year. And as the village has been involved with the Reading Road Corridor project to try to identify different land use, and Village Council has recommended a different land use along Reading Road, really felt that the demolition of those 2 facilities was really what was necessary in order to change the landscape on Reading Road. So the port is currently removing asbestos from both facilities, and we'll move into the demolition phase hopefully later this month. It's going to take a little while for that demolition to occur. But that is great news for us as a neighboring community that the demolition is underway. And that concludes my report.
Yeah, Mayor, I have a question, Scott, in relation to volunteering for the ice cream social. I know that obviously if you're attending, you wear whatever T-shirt, political, et cetera. We have an election in November. Last year, I noticed a few volunteers working in village stands wearing political T-shirts. Can we provide any guidance to remind people that if you're a volunteer, either wear the village T-shirt or something generic, but I don't care what side you're on, we shouldn't be having somebody with a political message in a village booth. Can we do that?
I believe that we can. I'm not certain how we've handled that in the past. I think we have distributed T-shirts to all of the volunteers. Yeah. I don't know that we have been intentional to make sure that everybody is wearing a volunteer shirt, but I'll see what we can do this week to communicate that to our upcoming volunteers.
Any other questions for the manager? The one thing, Scott, that I'm shocked that you did not mention, since it was something that you have endeavored over probably 6 years to work on, is the completion of the Farmcrest project. It was actually, last Saturday, I was on my afternoon walk, and I'm walking Farmcrest, and they were actually doing the final paving on a Saturday. And I'm sure the residents of North and South Farmcrest were very thankful that this process is finally complete. I'm sure there are, similar to the fencing, there's probably still a couple things that need to be fixed, but we really do thank you and your entire staff for the dedication of getting that project finally done. Lieutenant Bloom has no report for the chief's report this evening. And on the mayor's report, the only thing I would mention is the ice cream social that's coming up this Sunday from 1 to 4. It's an event that the staff really endeavors to put on a great afternoon for our residents. They enjoy it. I think our residents very much enjoy it. And hopefully, I think the weather looks to be probably pretty hot, which is perfect for an ice cream social as they spray water on the tennis court. And I hope residents enjoy it just as much as they have in the past. Is there any new business?
Can I just add one thing, since we are against his better wishes honoring Rick Kay? I'd be remiss not to point out his service as treasurer to many nonprofits in this community, and I've had the pleasure to serve on several boards with you, and you are as well respected and appreciated there as you are here. Thank you.
Anything else? If not, we can consider the meeting adjourned. Thank you very much for attending, and thank Rick for all that you do.